Hey guys, welcome back. I was gonna try to do a different intro. Here we are, breaking up with the Burnout podcast. You guys know I'm super casual around here, and I often have guests because I love introducing my people or friends that I have met to you guys. And today I have my new friend Jessica. We are both talkers. We just talked about that we are both talkers, so we have a lot to talk about and share. And I just loved our connect call, and I was like, we gotta jump on the podcast together. Jessica, I'm just so glad to have you here.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Walton. I'm otherwise known as the inclusive copywriter. Off the side of my desk, I also do nonpartisan political education, like so many of us multi-talented, multi-interested folks. And one thing that I really try to bring into my business is being against hustle culture, which of course works into being against burnout. So that's why I'm here chatting with Tiffany today.
Yeah, I love it. Let's just jump into it. Tell me about your love for anti-hustle culture. Like, how did you get there? How did you decide like this hustle is not for me?
Before starting my business, I worked a government job, like a frontline service providing government job. And there was a lot of expectations of like extra work, free labor, and like volunteering outside of the job. So burnout came with the territory. And I looked at a lot of the people around me, like politicians or people who had been in that job for a long time. And I really started to see that I didn't want that for my future. As someone who has had chronic illness, disability, neurodivergent, I really saw that a lot of those people were ignoring those parts of themselves and it was causing like worse issues for them. So when I saw the opportunity to get out of that line of work, I wanted to focus in on something that I'm really passionate about, which is writing, copywriting, and inclusion and accessibility. But I wanted to make sure that I was rebuilding my life in the image that I wanted, not based on other people's expectations. So that's something I've really tried to carry through my business and promote anti-hustle culture so that other people know like you can build a business and not hate your life. And I always say being anti-hustle culture doesn't necessarily mean being anti-hard work.
Yeah.
It's just also having healthy boundaries.
Yes, exactly. I say that all the time because people will be like, I'm just gonna be lazy if I don't hustle. And it's that kind of that like black and white thinking. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, trust me, like I work hard but I do not hustle anymore.
And if anything,
Um,
you have to work hard to rest as well,
exactly.
right? Learning how to rest. Like I was chatting with a friend about this the other day, especially like with social media and comparing yourself to others. It can be hard to feel like you shouldn't be productive all the time. And I like to remind people that like rest is productive, first of all. Like your brain functions better when you're resting, and it also supports the other work that you do. So rest is
Yes,
important.
it is. I remember when I learned when you sleep or when you are resting, you don't have to be sleeping. There's a part of your brain that lights up that actually organizes and files away and processes everything. And if we don't give it enough time to do that, then we're not fully recharged. I think of like our computers. If we don't give it space to like put things where it needs to go and do what it needs to do, it starts glitching. Like my
Yeah.
computer just told me a couple weeks ago that there's too many things open. Its working memory is having a hard time, that I got to close these apps down. And I was like, just pushing you a little too hard over here. And that's like our lives. We tend to do that.
Exactly. I just had this conversation with my maternity doctor because, as some people will know, I'm about 25 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
So that's another change coming up in my life. But I mentioned to the doctor that I'm waking up more frequently throughout the night, which is normal in pregnancy. And she reminded me that if I'm resting, my body is still getting a benefit. So it was really great to have that reaffirmed. And even for someone like me who's used to like focusing on rest, it was great to have that like reminder from a doctor that rest is important and beneficial.
Yeah, because sometimes we need that outside reminders because we get in our heads about things or like our knee-jerk reaction. I know for me, sometimes my knee-jerk reaction is to lean into the hard work and kind
Yeah.
of grind a little bit more. And it's no, like you can give yourself permission to rest.
Yeah.
Important that it is doing something, even if it's not in the way that you think.
And I think that comes in seasons sometimes or in waves. Like, I think it's okay sometimes to know, okay, this is a season where I'm going to be a little more tired or work a little harder. But if, for those of us who are more susceptible to burnout, like especially like autistic burnout and things like that,
Mhm.
it's important to acknowledge that those periods are happening so that we can create spaces for rest so it doesn't become like a bigger problem.
Yes, yes, definitely, for sure, and I think that we feel like going in the same lines, it's like we feel like we can run at the same pace as other people that are around us. And regardless, even I think of like for me, I'm a highly sensitive person. So I am taking in a lot of what's around me, whereas somebody that isn't can totally function way longer, way faster, way
Yeah.
harder in some ways than me because they're not carrying the emotional weight of like just the environment that's around them.
Yeah, I think that's super relevant for people who like feel things deeply. There's also like ruminative thinking,
Yes.
like intrusive thoughts,
Mhm.
rejection sensitive dysphoria. I feel like all of those
Mhm.
things can play into adding to burnout. And for myself, having been involved in politics and like I'm still somewhat involved to a degree, that's like an area where those things can be really serious. And even when you're promoting your business online, there's just a lot of like stuff coming in and coming at you. And something again that I was talking with a friend about recently was like, how do we set those boundaries when we are promoting ourselves online and engaging in the digital world? And I turn off notifications. I use like the sleep mode on Instagram. I don't respond to all messages or emails like all day long, because I feel like if I was doing that, like I would just be constantly overstimulated. So I set periods where I do that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then for certain periods, I will just completely ignore it. And another really important thing for me that has helped me manage like disabilities and pain and things like that and pregnancy is
Mhm.
going to the gym and working out and lifting heavy weights. So a
Yeah.
lot of times people will be like, oh, can you come out to a meeting at 7 a.m.? And I'm like, no, I need to sleep.
Yeah.
And also, I need to go to the gym before I can function. So I feel like that's when we were talking about like how do we work hard and also avoid burnout. It might mean going to bed earlier or shutting off our screens or making time for
Mhm.
like a yoga session or a gym session and going for a walk outside. Like those are things that are like survival mechanisms for me. And without them, I would not be able to do everything else that I do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love to call those micro moments of wellness because we have to, one, when we think of micro, we're like that it's smaller things that are going on throughout our day that we're doing to rest. Like you said, take a walk outside. Maybe going to the gym is not micro, but like having those
Can
moments where
be. You can work
yeah,
out quickly.
yeah, you can. You can do a
Yeah.
15-minute workout done. Before in seasons, and knowing like understanding and knowing what your body needs, I think is huge too, of the awareness of, "Okay, I am feeling stressed," or like the email notifications are stressing me out. I just did a little bit of a deep dive into media and the impacts on your health, and I'll have a Substack probably by the time we publish this, I'll have a Substack article about it because I was looking at how social media influences our nervous system,
Yeah.
how it was designed. I know that, like, if you see the documentaries and stuff, they talk about how it was designed. They designed it with behavior psychologists and neuroscientists for that, and that it keeps you in that stimulation, that active, really activation. It can put you into that fight or flight state. And then it keeps your attention by having the dopamine of the clicks,
Yeah.
likes, and the captions and the videos. And so you're constantly stimulated to stay on. I recognized recently as the transitions that we are making personally that I was like, I cannot get on social media like I was getting. I cannot scroll. I cannot. Like I actually
Yeah.
deleted my Instagram app like a week and a half ago
Yeah. I have
because
a
I
few
was
apps that I don't have on my phone. I'll only use it on the computer. Yeah.
yes. 'Cause I was like, "I can't do this anymore." Because I was realizing how it was affecting my nervous system.
Yeah, and I think it's that, and also with the heavy things that are going on in the world. And
Mhm.
I would never advocate for ignoring those things. I think it's important that we stay aware. But I also think like sometimes we do need a break from that in order
Yeah.
to stay engaged and be involved in like activism and things like that. Like I do have Instagram on my phone still. That's one of the ones I've kept, but I don't
Yeah.
have X or like Facebook Messenger. I ignore those kinds of things. But I also have separate accounts on my Instagram. Like I keep my business account very focused on business. I keep my politics account very focused on politics. I have a
Mhm.
personal account that's mostly like weightlifting and baby stuff. And then I
Yeah.
also have a cat account for those days that you just want to look at cats. And I think
Yeah.
that's something else sometimes. I think business owners can get caught up in this as well, but I think especially for people who have a personal account where they're just flooded with all sorts of kind of traumatizing content, it's really hard to avoid things that are going to make you anxious. And that's something I've been extra hyper aware about, like over the last several years that I've been working on this, but especially since getting pregnant. Like, I usually love watching like horror movies and action movies and things like that. But during pregnancy, I find like my stress reactions are a little bit
Yeah.
higher. I've not been watching like anything like scary or gruesome. Like, I've been keeping it a lot lighter when it comes to the content that I'm taking in. And I feel like that is something like I'm grateful that I had that awareness before pregnancy, because one of the main things I hear from a lot of pregnant women is how stressed they are. And I feel like for the most part, I'm avoiding a lot of that stress because I have tools like from my previous existence that are helping me like keep the stress levels as low as possible.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that, and knowing that, like, every season may require different pivots and different for you to be able to use, and that's okay. Because sometimes it's be nice to say, "Okay, I'm gonna pick a couple of these tools and do a couple of these different things, and it's gonna work, like, forever." And there
Yeah,
is
we change.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. We
yeah.
change, we grow, and things just don't work, or we need something a little different, or our body starts getting on autopilot so it doesn't respond in the same way. And no, like giving I think I've been talking about this a lot, like giving ourselves permission to make those changes. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's an overhaul of your entire life, no, but making those small shifts in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like we were talking about this before we got started as well. Like for myself, it takes me a really long time to adjust to new things. And I
Me
sometimes do
too.
need to start making those like subtle shifts. Like again, like I feel like with starting a business, I was so used to like working hard and
Mhm.
working all the time. And when I first started my business, I had to resist that urge. And it took me quite a while to really embody the anti-hustle culture.
Yes.
And I think that's why I started talking about it more like online and connecting with other like anti-hustle culture like entrepreneurs
Mhm.
so that I could make it more of a present thing in my mind. And I'm really big on don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. So if there's
Mhm.
something that I share or I talk about, I really try to embody that in my own life. But I do also think that it's important to recognize like there is a certain level of privilege to be able to be anti-hustle culture because some people are struggling and it doesn't feel like you can take breaks. And I think
Right.
that's where what you're talking about with the micro breaks and learning how to take those small moments for yourself
Mhm.
can be a stepping stone. And like having healthy boundaries and creating healthy habits for yourself obviously can't erase issues of like poverty and like low income. But I feel
Yeah.
like it is something that like everyone does have access to like going outside. And that's why I think
Mhm.
it's important. Like when we talk about resisting burnout, we think about the intersections and how
Great.
not everything is going to be accessible to everyone when it comes to resisting burnout, but how
Yeah.
can we support people to learn more about these things so that they can bring some of that into their own lives?
Yeah, 100%. I always love teaching about breathing techniques because and breathing exercises, and everybody's, "Oh, yeah, I breathe," or whatever, and I'm like, it's the most underrated free tool that we have our at
Absolutely.
disposal to release the stress, to prevent if
Yeah.
all you do is just learn a few breathing exercises, it will change. It will change them.
And frankly, that's another one that bleeds over into pregnancy. Like
Yeah.
A, for reducing stress, but as I get closer to labor, I'm learning more and more about these
Mhm.
things as well. And obviously that's not always enough to deal with pain and things like that.
Right.
And I know that
Right.
from having chronic pain as well. But it can be a tool that you can utilize, and it is something everyone has access to. Like, I feel like there's nothing better than deep breathing and going for a walk beside the ocean or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the ocean, amongst the trees, near water.
Yeah.
I always tell my husband, I'm like, just get me near water. I don't really care what
Yes.
it is. It could be a puddle
Yeah.
if we got, but if you can get me near water, then
That's why I'm very lucky living in Vancouver. We have it all. We've got mountains, we've got forests. The
yeah.
ocean is like a 2-minute walk for me. So it's definitely something like on days when I'm feeling more stressed, I'm like, I just got to get outside. Like, I don't need to go out for a long time, but I just need some fresh air to look at the water for a little bit. And I do like to listen to music and podcasts, but I also feel like sometimes just not being constantly stimulated is really important as well. So
Yep, I would agree.
occasionally I will try to take the headphones off when I go for a walk.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like to call it an awe walk. I didn't term this, but this was somebody, I'm trying to think who originally I heard it from. I can't remember, but what they were calling it an awe walking ties into my branding of See the Wonder of being able to observe the awe and wonder around you while you're taking your walk. So instead of listening to a podcast or music, it's observing the trees and the wind and any animals and the colors and like taking in your world through your senses.
Yeah.
And
I love
research.
springtime for that, especially. Noticing even here, we're starting to get little flower buds popping up, and it's
Yes.
so cool to watch that progress as well, to see the leaves growing on the trees and see the animals starting to come out again. I feel, yeah, spring is just a wonderful time for being able to notice that wonder.
Yes, I would agree. And there's the I think about in the mornings when I get up because I'm starting to notice like the shifting of the sun rising and where it rises because there's a spot
Hmm.
where in the spring summer it rises and I can see it from the door of our RV yet in the winter time. And so I've been seeing it lately and I'm just like taking a moment when I get up and because there's also research that says about like your circadian rhythms. And if you have sunlight in your face in the morning and in the evening, it will
Yeah.
help with sleep.
Yeah.
So, but also it's just really cool to see the sun rise in the morning as well. And it's warm again. It's becoming warm
Yes.
again.
I literally switched gyms a couple years ago because our new gym, like we've been going for a couple years, and it's actually less expensive, which is a benefit as well. But it's right on the water here at the waterfront in Vancouver. And
Yeah.
in the mornings, it's very quiet. There's just like seagulls flying around. And it's only about 30 seconds to a minute that we walk. Either I walk from the train or with my husband from the car. And just that like couple minutes of like serenity in the morning where you're seeing the sun come up and you're seeing the seagulls fly by and maybe a boat or two. But it's like there's nobody else out, which is another cool thing I find, like living in a bigger city. Something I've always really loved to do is be in places that are often super busy and full of people and tourists and everyone hustling and bustling. But being there in those quiet moments when it is just like
Mhm.
you, the birds, the water, it just brings a really nice calm to the start of your day.
Yeah, yeah, it gives you like an ease where you can like ease into the day and you're not like overstimulated by all the hustle and bustle that's around you.
Yeah. Same thing if I'm at home. I have my two cats here, George and Jerry. I'll sit on the couch with a coffee, and sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they're rambunctious. It
Yeah.
depends on the day. But it
Mm,
is
yeah.
nice to, yeah, have no screen time first thing in the morning. Just enjoy the coffee, enjoy the cats. And I'm curious too, like when I was busier in my business, and when I worked like in a busier job as well, I was always that person like at the end of my work day, I would like jot down things that were left over so that in the morning like I could just look at it. Like even now I operate out of my calendar and I find like doing that brain dump of stuff so that
Yes.
first thing in the morning I'm not like, "Oh God, what do I have to do?" I know that
Yes.
I just have it like somewhere else tucked away. Do you have any like tools like that you use to keep
Yeah.
yourself running smoothly?
Yeah, so I actually have a like a project management system that it holds my calendar, it holds my to-do list, I actually brain dump
Mhm.
in there. I still like writing. And so
Yes.
I'll write stuff too because there is that memory connection to writing. I don't write if I stick it straight into the
I love
system,
writing
but
things down.
yeah. Yeah, and I am visual too because I'll remember I'm like, "Oh, this the right top corner, I circled this thing on the paper, and I know that's what I need to look at." I write it down on the paper, but I also pop it into the system because I know my to-do list in there will be held, and on the paper it holds it, and it gets it out of my brain. And so it
Yeah.
decreases the mental load and having to carry it or remember it. And I have even like a tab in my management system that's called Brain Dump. And I have
Yeah.
one specifically for vacations too, because I'm like, I'm not touching anything, but I will open this app to this list so I can brain dump any ideas or thoughts I'm forgetting. I don't want to forget. I need to talk to somebody about something. So it holds it and I don't feel stressed
Yeah.
by or it creates stress, really, it creates stress and tension because you're like, "Oh, I gotta remember to do that," or, "I wanna remember to do that." I might not because I'm on vacation or I'm trying to unplug and I'm trying to rest, but my brain's still full of all this stuff, so having a place to put it is really helpful.
Well, I feel like that's what's so interesting again about trying to focus on being anti-hustle culture. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to be
Yes,
able
it
to
really
be
does.
anti-hustle culture. It is like I I think it's important to have our systems. I think especially when we talk about things like ADHD, I know systems are not always going to fix everything and some days are still going to be harder than others, but they are things that can bridge the gap to make things
Yeah.
easier most of the
Mhm,
time.
mhm.
And I do the same thing. Like at night, if I have ideas, like I just use the notes app on my phone. I
Yep,
do usually have a physical notebook lying around because I am a writer. So
too.
I do like to jot things down as well. But like we even do that. Like my husband works shift work. So when he's like on for 4 days, off for 4 days, the 4 days that he's working, we have like a calendar on the fridge where we just write
Mhm,
out the meals for the week. So
mhm.
even if like I am doing a little more of the cooking on those days, I don't have to have the mental like
Yes,
stress of oh what am I doing this week. So
right.
like planning things out in advance I feel like can help with stress as well. And same thing like you said on vacation or when you are taking rest time, like knowing that I'll get to that stuff later. And I think that was a hard thing to like unlearn. Like I remember also like I grew up working in retail like since I was a
Mhm.
teenager, and in a retail environment you're like responding to every customer and every
Yeah.
phone call and like everything. You're just constantly in this like hyper stimulation zone. And I remember I got a job working as a host in a restaurant in Kitsilano here, and my new boss at the time, she was great. She was like a little jujitsu master. Like I just
Nice.
loved her. But I remember the phone was ringing and we were like in the middle of a conversation and went to go answer the phone. She's, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "The phone's ringing." And she's like, "Just leave it." And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
so
You're like,
confused by that idea that I could just leave a task till later. But that's something that did help me. Yes, my government job was stressful, but sometimes when we were helping a constituent or we were working on something important, we did have to ignore something that was popping up in the
"Yep,
moment. And
yeah,
I feel like that's what I've tried to carry with me into my business, that not everything is urgent. And
yes."
especially in copywriting, there aren't really copywriting emergencies unless you're doing
Yeah,
like crisis management. And I think
yeah,
I've seen that with friends who have like social media related businesses. They're like, "Oh, our client is asking me for something. I have to do it right now." And I'm like, "Do
I
you?"
know.
Like,
Yeah,
so
yes,
I think talking about that more has meant that most of the clients that I've worked with are more understanding of that. And it means like the people that I'm working with, like we are on the same page about having healthy work-life boundaries. But I do think that's something, especially people who are like new to business, can really struggle with because you want to always seem available or seem on top of things. But to me, like, I don't want that frantic energy. I would rather work with people who are calm because I also think like we make better decisions when we're not in that hyper arousal state.
exactly. Yeah, because our literal, like, rational thinking, logical thinking parts of our brains, like our prefrontal cortex and all of this on top, it goes off when we're aware state, so we aren't thinking as clearly, or we're not making decisions that is most alignment for ourselves. We're just, like, reacting instead of
Yeah.
responding, and then later, we're like, "Why in the world did I schedule so many appointments on my schedule, or I had
Yeah.
that happen the other day, and I was like, "Why do I have so many things booked on this day?" I don't know why I did that, but it was just
Yeah.
because I made quick decisions and didn't block off pieces of my schedule in a way that I know that works for me. So, I like that you brought up the sense of urgency, because this has been a conversation I've had with some friends lately, and that false sense of urgency of, is everything actually urgent? Do we actually have to get to those tasks? Like, I try to, even just like with my work, I try to shut down like my emails and my notifications when I'm on a call and whatnot, because it really can wait. It really can wait. We just think it can't because it's popped up or it's new, or it's like a mini dopamine hit when you see that notification and you're like, "Oh, it's diverting my attention elsewhere." But it also causes fatigue when we're
Yeah.
switching so much. I think it's like the lie of multitasking as well.
Yeah. Which I've definitely
We
been guilty of in the past.
Oh, yeah, me too. I
But
still
and
have
I think it's okay sometimes, but I think it is that thing like I'm like not a numbers person, I'm a words person. But there are a lot of things coming out these days about like people used to only switch tasks on their computer or check their email like a certain number of times. And that number now is like exponentially larger. So
this.
people are really only like looking at something for a handful of seconds or minutes. And how do you focus? Especially if you're someone who struggles with focus. Like it's so
Mhm.
difficult to stay focused if you're constantly switching from one task to another. And I think that's why one thing, like, I think these are like muscles we need to exercise. Like, for me, a lot of things come back to like exercise and literally and figuratively, because I used to go to like hot yoga classes before getting pregnant, and you put
Mhm.
your phone away. And it
Mhm.
is like helpful in a mindfulness practice that you're not like constantly looking at your phone.
Yep.
There were people that would like still wear their like Apple
Like
Watches and things like
watches.
that into the
Yeah.
class. And I'm like, just leave it, put it away. You don't need that here. And I went to a movie with my husband the other day, and like, when you're in a movie, you're not looking at your phone. That's why going to the theater is a different experience still than sitting at home and watching a movie or going out to dinner with friends. Like, I'm that person that tries to at least turn my phone down, if not put it in my pocket. And the other really cool one actually was on Valentine's Day, my husband and I went to a concert where they put your phones in one of those like locking bags.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
every single person in the stadium was without their phone.
yeah.
And it was really like, it really felt like you walked back in time,
That's
because
awesome.
the last time I went to a concert like that, I was like, it was like 20 years ago. I was like a
Yeah,
teenager.
yeah.
Um, and it was a really neat experience because you feel so present in the moment when you're not constantly thinking like, oh, I gotta check, I gotta check.
Mhm.
Did somebody text me? Somebody call me? And yes, I had texts and calls when I finished the movie or finished the concert or finished my yoga class, but nothing was really urgent. Like I could get back to
Yes,
people. It's nothing explosive happened. Everything was fine, and I didn't look at my
exactly.
phone for
Yeah.
hours on end. So I think
Yeah,
sometimes it's
yeah.
good to like practice that.
I would agree, I would agree. My husband I first started doing this of, like, just leaving my phone places. I would just not take it with me. We can be guilty of taking our phones to the bathrooms and,
Yeah.
scrolling while we're using the bathroom just for a minute. I'm like, "This is dumb. Why am I scrolling using the bathroom? You're not gonna really see anything." But I started leaving my phone in different places because I was, "Don't need to carry it with me." And he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't need people to have access to me 24/7.
Yeah.
Like, it is okay." And like I use the silent mode at night at like turns
Mm.
certain time. And yeah, sure, my favorites list, if it's an emergency, I tell everybody,
Yeah.
call me twice, it will ring.
Yeah.
Or call my husband because he will keep his phone on him.
Yeah.
But because he's always like, his background in the EMS, he's always, "What if somebody calls and we don't know?" I'm like, "They will get a hold of us. Like, it'll be okay." And I don't want, if I'm supposed to wind down at night at a certain time and it takes me sometimes a little bit longer, I don't want to be interrupted as I'm winding down. If it's just
Mm.
a question or I'm curious or a phone call just to catch up, I'm like, I need that time to allow my brain to stop and disconnect.
Yeah.
And it really changes the way you sleep. And you notice there's like more space. That's the way I keep describing it. There's more space in your brain and your body. You're
Mm.
not constantly stimulated like that.
It's like letting yourself be bored a little bit. It's just so important for creativity.
Yeah.
And regardless what kind of business owner you are, you do need to be a little bit creative in order to like think about strategy or your content, or maybe you have a creative business, and or frankly
Mhm.
just things outside of business as well. Like even when I'm not working on copywriting, I do creative writing and like nonfiction writing, and I love going to the library. We have great like, free writing classes, and I did a class the other day on like genealogy research. And I think it's important to have like interests and a life outside of your main thing,
Yeah. Oh,
because it like helps your brain think of things in different ways. And
yeah.
how do we get to that point if we're
Mhm.
always hyper focused on one thing and we
Yeah.
don't create, like you said, that space
Mhm.
to have other interests or to be bored and think random thoughts? It's,
Mhm.
but and I always think too, like I saw something that said the other day that the reason time seems to go by so much faster as we age compared to when we're children is that as children, everything's like a new experience.
Yeah.
And as we get older, like we're not like experiencing new things. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's how do we get to that point of like creativity and play and having fun if we're
Mhm.
always like work?
Yeah. Yes. And like you said, it unlocks that creativity. So like for your work,
Yeah.
you need that space. Like I had to really learn too with work, and I still am, I think, learning it to a certain extent, is that me just like pondering and resting and reflecting is part of my work. That's where,
Yes.
and I've seen it so many times where creativity comes in or an idea comes
Hmm.
in, and I'm resting and reflecting, or I'm walking instead of getting my to-do list done. It's like creativity comes outside of that. And so it's
Yeah.
just as important to rest so that comes in. And I think, like you said, the stimulation of new hobbies and things is so like you can read there's so much research on brain functioning and brain health and body health, and so that even though it can feel nervous, because I talked to a lot of clients that are like, I want to do new things, but it feels really I feel really anxious to do those new things. And so it's like talking about, and I think a lot of that can come from and not always, but I think it has exasperated from our isolation and with COVID.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
has definitely changed the nature of being social again. And what does that feel like? So it's like we haven't flexed that muscle enough that where it used to be routine and now it's not, we can get complacent in our normal routines. But when we step, I always encourage people like, try it once
Yeah.
through the anxiety, go there. If it's like terrible, one, you can leave early. Nobody
Yeah.
is asking you to stay. And two, you might really love it. You might,
I
and
always say that to people who are like, a lot of people ask me like, about going to the gym and things like that. And they're like, oh, but it's just, it's so scary. And I'm like, you like will probably feel anxious the first few times you go. That's super normal. It's a new
yeah,
environment. It can be an
exactly.
intimidating environment. I think it's the
Yeah,
same thing with starting a new business. Like it's a
yeah.
big, scary
Mhm,
thing that you're doing.
mhm.
I'm a big fan of be afraid and do it anyway. But I also like, I do understand that there's different types and levels of anxiety.
Yeah,
And on
for
the one hand, like, I do think because of COVID, we are used to things being mediated through a screen,
yeah.
and that we should try to be more in community as
Mhm,
much as we can. And you
yeah,
can do that digitally as
right.
well. And even in that sense, there are lots of great free, like low commitment things you can do
Yes,
online. Like
yeah.
you could do a fitness class on YouTube, or
Mm,
again, like libraries are often a great resource for free
yeah, they really
events,
are.
and that you can try a new skill without having to buy a new membership or do something that's a
Mhm,
high cost or high commitment. But it's like you can try that stuff on your own. You can try it with a group of people. Like you can do it in a way that's a little bit scary, but still like close to your comfort zone. And I
yeah,
think that's another thing. Like I think you were saying earlier about this like black and white or all or nothing kind of thinking. When we want to make those changes in our lives, it doesn't have to always be a big drastic change. We're into the nearly the end of February now here, But I think especially at the new year, this is something I talk a lot about when it comes to anti-hustle culture, is that we should ignore that kind of messaging of change your whole life. Like it's
Yep.
okay to take a little baby step and just
Yeah.
read a page of a book or do a 5-minute workout. Like
Yep.
it's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm also a big fan, like another kind of tip that I give people when it comes to feeling anxious about productivity, and like anti-hustle culture is like instead of creating a to-do list, or even if you are creating a to-do list, include things you've already done so that
Yeah.
you can check
Check
off
it off.
like
Mhm.
something
Mhm.
at the start and be like, I've already achieved this. I've already achieved this. Maybe it won't be so hard to achieve that next thing because it
Yeah.
is something you can do to encourage yourself to not feel like it's everything is so big and scary and I can't do it. Like you can remind
Exactly.
yourself, I've already done this and this. So maybe
Yeah.
that one more thing doesn't have to be so scary.
Yeah, no, I love that because I talk to people about like drawing, and I do this myself, like drawing on prior experiences too. Sometimes going to new groups and stuff like that. I've been trying to build in-person community, just flexing that muscle, seeing what that looks like. And I find myself like nervous. Like we were just talking about, I have a little bit of that anxiety, but I can remember a time in my life where it was so easy and exciting and it's okay.
Yeah.
I have to remember I have flexed this muscle before. It's just a
Yeah,
little rusty and that I
exactly.
always enjoy it. And for me, another time I once I get there and I'm in it, I have so much fun. I'm great. I'm glad I went. It's just the hard I've said this before, the hardest part of exercise is putting your shoes on.
Yes.
So I think that's the same thing with anything. It's like the hardest part is like that anticipation for going. And if we can close the gap on that anticipation and know that like you're gonna be okay and things are gonna be all right, and
Mhm.
trusting yourself to make the decision of like either I leave early if I am not comfortable here, or I can stay and really enjoy myself.
Yeah, I think a lot of overcoming that anxiety is like not trying to ignore it, but instead,
Yeah.
like you said, like giving yourself permission to like give yourself like accommodations, right?
Yes, for it.
And I think
Mhm.
that's something like, especially with my pregnancy and how my body is changing, like mostly my workouts look the same, but I
Yeah.
have had to have a few days where I'm like, I'm just a little more tired today. I'm only going to do like a machines workout, just the easy
Mhm.
stuff where I can sit down. So like I am making an accommodation for myself based
Yeah.
on where my energy level is at that day.
Mhm.
And I think I had a friend who comes to the gym with me like almost weekly, but we don't hit every week and that's fine. And
Yeah.
she told me that she felt like if she didn't work out for like an hour and a half, like it was a failure. And I was
Yep.
like, you can just do 2 or 3 exercises.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Yes.
And especially when you look at what's recommended, like even just moving your body for 20, 30 minutes a day is
Mm.
better than nothing, right? And
Yeah.
is going to give you those health benefits. Like the benefits after that are very minimal. So I
Yes.
think it's important to remember it's the same thing with any healthy habit that you're trying to build, like out and socializing with people, like having a little conversation with like your grocery store cashier is a good way to practice that. Like it doesn't have to be, like I said, like going to a giant networking event, or
Right.
maybe you go to the big networking event, but then you give yourself permission to leave after half an hour. So I
Exactly.
think it is important sometimes, like when it comes to being anti-hustle culture, again, like we said, isn't about not pushing yourself a little bit and doing some hard work, recognizing that you're allowed to have boundaries, you're allowed to say no, you're allowed to say, I'm not feeling this today or
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
activity, and just creating, like I said, like the life that is in the image of what you want it to be, not other people's expectations.
Exactly, yes, and I think too, it's giving so talking about chronic illness and, like, fatigue that we can feel from that
Yeah.
is giving yourself permission to change your mind.
Mhm.
Day shows up and maybe your capacity isn't as high or you're experiencing more fatigue or whatever it is, and you had made plans. That it is okay to change your mind and say, "You know what? I really do wanna go to this, but I don't know if I feel up to it or I'm not feeling good for it." I think I had to learn that a lot. I can remember, like, in my 20s just feeling so guilty and just
Yeah.
ruminating over, "I can't believe it, like, why didn't I say yes when I can't go?" Or I used to overbook myself, and I'd be running like crazy, and even now, sometimes that guilt comes in a little bit because it's, "Man, I really wanna do this," but my body is really telling me, like, I need to rest instead of go. So,
And I think obviously that's super extra relevant for people with disabilities. I think it's
mhm,
also something important to remember. I experienced a lot of mental health challenges when I was younger. I'm very lucky to have overcome like depression and anxiety,
mhm,
but something
yeah,
I had to learn once I had overcome those problems is that people who aren't like stuck in depression and stuck in anxiety still experience those things. Like
yes,
still
yeah,
experience feelings of anxiety or
yeah,
exhaustion. No matter where you fall on that scale, it's
yeah,
okay to say no. It's
yes,
okay to listen to your body.
right,
And I think the more that we normalize that for everyone, the less
hmm,
stigma there is for people who struggle with like chronic illness and
yeah,
depression and like
yeah,
mental health issues, because it is like a hustle culture. It's
yeah,
something that there's pressure externally trying
right,
to like make us feel guilty a lot of the time.
yes,
And it is hard to be an advocate for yourself if you're in one of those environments. So I think, yes, like we need to talk about it in the context of those who like are marginalized, but I also think we need to talk about it in an overarching way that
yeah,
everyone should have the right to stay home if they're sick, to be able to
exactly.
sleep. Like
Mm-hmm.
glorifying not enough sleep or overwork is how other people will end up with chronic illness
Right,
and disabilities.
exactly. Yeah. No, I would agree too. I would agree. I like that you said that of normalizing the conversation across the board because I think these conversations, I keep thinking about if we would give permission to each other. So not even ourselves, if we're working on ourselves and you're like, okay, maybe I can't say no yet, but I'm going to give permission to somebody else to say no. Because so often I can think over my experience in life in general or what people have said to me. It's like other people make comments
Yeah.
and they might
Well,
be well-meaning, but it feels really
it
hard.
can still be very hurtful.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I was talking about when I said, because I talk about this a lot, I mostly attract clients who feel and think the same way or similarly to
Right.
me.
Mhm.
And I think even with friends, like I mentioned, my friend that I go to the gym with, she
Mhm.
knows I'm a safe person to cancel on. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
give you crap for it. I'm going to say, oh, no worries. You have your period or you didn't sleep well last night. No problem. I'll see you next week. And I think that we should have more of that culture of like understanding when people need to take care of themselves. Because I
Yeah.
just, having gone through like the chronic illness and chronic pain and disabilities
Mhm.
in an environment where I didn't feel supported, it really made me feel like I never want to do that to anybody else. I never want to make anybody else feel
No.
like their health should come second, like
Yes.
health or mental health.
Yep.
So I think that's
Same.
a message I try to put out there to people that if someone is trying to make you feel that way, like A, they
Mhm.
probably have some internalized ableism to deal with, but
Yep.
B, like they're probably struggling with that themselves. Like they might have
Mhm.
some insecurities themselves.
Yeah.
So I try really hard not to worry about the judgment of others, which is easier said than done sometimes, and
Yeah.
to remember that you're the only person who knows how your body is feeling. Like I was
Exactly.
chronically ill as a child and a teenager, and I
Mhm.
constantly had like teachers, peers, employers trying to tell me how I feel. And
Mhm.
I really had to learn, you have no clue what's going on in my brain or in my body. Only I
Yeah.
know that. And I think that I'm very lucky to carry that into my pregnancy because I know how to advocate for myself now. But it
Yeah.
is hard to do that on your own. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to, again, exist in community and find
Mhm.
other people that support you, which can be hard to do. But I think
Yeah.
that's why it's great what you're doing. And even with this podcast, like
Mhm.
talking to people about it, making it more of a
Yes.
normalized conversation so
Yes.
that people do understand like it is okay to take a day off or to skip an
Mhm.
event or whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and being able to have compassion instead of guilt for
Yeah.
yourself about it, for sure. Awesome. All right, I feel like we could talk all day, so I will cut it off there for now, and maybe we'll have a part 2 because I feel like there's always more conversation to have around these topics. So, the last question I like to ask guests is, how are you currently breaking up with burnout?
That's a really great question for me right now for two
Mhm.
reasons. One, obviously, I'm pregnant, and so I am really acknowledging that in a few months, my life is going to change a lot. And I literally just had a friend today ask me if I could come to an event that's in the evening, that's like in a city beside, like a few cities over from mine. And I said, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it. I just don't have the energy for that. And they're like, oh, well, come back in our group chat and like we can all just talk virtually then. And I was kind of like, I'm being really mindful of the energy that I have right now. So that's not going to work for me. And I'm lucky my friends understand that. But I do
Yeah.
think that's going to be something going forward that I just have to be really careful with how I'm spending my energy. And that even sometimes if it's something I want to do, if I know it's going to lead to burnout, I'm still going to say no.
Yeah.
And the other reason that it's very important for me right now is that though I've been doing nonpartisan political work for the last 5 years, we have a municipal election coming up here in Vancouver and across our province in BC in the fall.
Mhm.
And I won't get into it a whole lot, but I have been considering getting a little bit more involved. And I've been thinking really hard about how could I do that this time, engage politically without being burnt out.
Yeah.
And another piece of it for me is creating those boundaries and not
Mhm.
going on certain social media and not saying yes to every opportunity. And I think, again, like whether you're an activist or an entrepreneur or you work a 9 to 5, we all really struggle with that idea of should I say yes to every opportunity? Should I go to every event? And I think learning more about how your body operates, how your mind operates, you need can help you like weigh, will this lead to burnout or not?
Yeah.
So there's never like a clear point where you're going to be an
Right.
expert. I think we all have to like keep learning. And like you
Yeah.
said, we change and life changes. But
Yeah.
as you move into those new phases of life or face new opportunities, it's
Mhm.
taking that time to pause and reflect
Yeah.
and make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah. No, I love that so much. Thank you here, Jessica.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you. I'd be happy to chat again anytime.
Yeah, yeah. Tell the listeners where they can find you.
So, the best place to find me right now is at The Inclusive Copywriter on Instagram.
Mhm.
I also do some political work at Politics with Jess, though that account might be changing a little bit, but you'll be able to find me from my Inclusive Copywriter account.
Awesome. Yeah. And we will link all of her accounts and her websites and whatnot in the show notes to make sure you guys can have it. So make sure you check out the show notes so you can click on her links, connect with her, and we can continue this conversation. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening in to the Breaking Up with Burnout podcast, and we will see you